The conference room felt suffocating as Evelyn Wood closed the door behind us, her hand lingering on the handle longer than necessary. The overhead lights had been dimmed to their evening setting, casting long shadows across the polished table where I had sat through countless meetings over the past 3 years. But this was different. This was after hours, just the two of us, and the weight of what she was about to say hung in the air like electricity before a storm. She turned to face me, her usually composed executive demeanor cracking just slightly around the edges. At 52, Evelyn commanded respect in every boardroom she entered. Her silver-streaked hair always perfectly styled, her tailored suits a armor of professionalism. But right now, in the dim light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, she looked vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. My name is James Diaz, and I am 29 years old. I work as a marketing coordinator at Peterson and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm downtown. For 3 years, I had admired Evelyn from a distance, watching her lead meetings with quiet confidence, noticing the way she remembered everyone's names and asked about their families. She was the kind of boss who stayed late to help struggling employees, who brought coffee to the security guards on holidays, who somehow managed to be both incredibly successful and genuinely kind. What I did not know, as I stood there that evening 6 months ago, was that everything was about to change between us. That the professional relationship I had carefully maintained, the respectful distance I had kept, was about to dissolve into something neither of us had planned, but both of us desperately needed. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you are watching from and hype this video in the comments. This story is about to take you on a journey that proves love really can find you when you least expect it. But let me start from the beginning, because the path to that conference room started on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, when my alarm failed to go off, and my entire carefully ordered life began to unravel in the most beautiful way possible. I have always been the reliable one, the guy who shows up 15 minutes early, who never misses deadlines, who keeps his head down and does good work without making waves. My apartment is clean but sparse, my social life limited to occasional drinks with my college roommate Paul Mendoza, and my romantic history could charitably be described as unsuccessful. I had been hurt before, badly enough that I had stopped trying to impress women or chase after relationships that felt forced. That Tuesday morning, I rushed into the office 20 minutes late, my hair still damp from the world's fastest shower, clutching a gas station coffee that tasted like regret. The elevator was broken, so I took the stairs to the 7th floor, arriving slightly out of breath and definitely frazzled. As I hurried toward my cubicle, I nearly collided with Evelyn in the hallway. She was carrying a stack of files that went flying when I bumped into her, papers scattering across the carpet like oversized confetti. I immediately dropped to my knees, gathering documents while apologizing profusely. She knelt beside me, and for a moment our hands brushed as we reached for the same paper. "I am sorry. I am so sorry," I said, looking up to meet her eyes. I have never been this late before. My alarm did not go off, and then my coffee maker broke and I had to stop for gas and the elevator is out of order. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. "It is okay, James, really. These things happen to all of us." What struck me was that she knew my name. In a company with over 200 employees, the senior vice president knew my name. But more than that, there was something in her voice, a warmth that I had not heard before in our brief professional interactions. We finished collecting the papers in comfortable silence, and when we stood up, she was closer than I expected. Close enough that I caught a hint of her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made my pulse quicken in a way that was completely inappropriate for the workplace. "Thank you," she said, adjusting the files in her arms. "And James, do not worry about being late. I would rather have employees who are human than robots who never make mistakes." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the hallway with the distinct feeling that something had shifted. It was a small moment, lasting maybe 90 seconds, but it lodged itself in my memory with surprising persistence. Over the next few weeks, I found myself noticing things about Evelyn that I had somehow missed before. The way she always said good morning to the cleaning staff. How she kept a small succulent on her desk that she watered religiously. The fact that she often worked late, her office light still on when most of us had gone home. I started staying later myself, not because I had extra work, but because I enjoyed the quiet of the office after hours. Sometimes I would see her in the break room, heating up leftovers for dinner, and we would exchange polite conversation about weekend plans or upcoming projects. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that crossed professional boundaries, but there was an ease to these interactions that felt different from the formal politeness of daytime meetings. One evening in early April, I was working on a presentation when my computer crashed, taking 3 hours of work with it. I may have said some words that were not suitable for a professional environment loudly. Evelyn appeared at my cubicle a few minutes later, drawn by what she later told me sounded like a very creative string of profanity. "Computer problems?" she asked, leaning against the partition. "The worst kind," I said, gesturing at the black screen. "3 hours of work, gone. I know I should have saved more frequently, but I was in the zone and now I am going to be here until midnight trying to recreate everything." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Come on, you can use my office computer. I have the same software," and I was about to leave anyway. I protested that I could not take over her office, but she insisted. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at her desk, surrounded by the subtle luxury of executive furnishings, trying to focus on my presentation while acutely aware of her presence. She had not left as promised. Instead, she sat in the chair across from her own desk, reading through reports and occasionally offering suggestions when I hit a snag. The presentation took 2 hours to recreate, but it felt like minutes. We fell into an easy rhythm of work and conversation, talking about everything from marketing strategies to favorite movies to the challenges of living in the city. I learned that she had been divorced for 5 years, that she had no children but loved her role as aunt to her sister's kids, and that she sometimes felt invisible in a world that seemed to value youth above experience. That last comment hit me unexpectedly hard. Here was this brilliant, accomplished, beautiful woman who felt invisible. It seemed impossible, but the vulnerability in her voice when she said it told me she was being completely honest. "You are not invisible," I said without thinking. The words came out more forcefully than I intended, and she looked up from her papers with surprise. "I mean," I continued, feeling heat rise in my cheeks, "you are one of the most respected people in this company. Everyone looks up to you. You are definitely not invisible." She studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was just being polite. "Thank you," she said finally. "That means more than you know." The presentation was finished by 9:30, but neither of us seemed eager to leave. We ended up talking for another hour, sitting in her office with the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. She told me about her ex-husband, a man who had grown distant and critical as she became more successful. I shared my own relationship disasters, including the girlfriend who had left me for someone with better career prospects and a flashier car. "It is funny," Evelyn said as we finally prepared to leave. "I spent so many years trying to prove I belonged in rooms full of men twice my age. Now I am twice the age of half my employees, and I sometimes wonder if I still belong anywhere." "You belong here," I said. "This company would fall apart without you. But more than that, you belong wherever you want to be. Age is just a number." She smiled at that, but there was sadness in it. Easy to say when you are 29. The comment stung, not because it was mean-spirited, but because it highlighted the gap between us that I was trying very hard not to think about. She was right, of course. I was 29 to her 52. She was a senior executive while I was a mid-level coordinator. She owned a house in the suburbs while I rented a one-bedroom apartment. On paper, we had nothing in common. But sitting in her office that night, talking until the cleaning crew arrived and politely suggested we might want to head home, none of those differences seemed to matter. What mattered was the way she laughed at my jokes, the way she listened when I talked about my dreams of maybe starting my own consulting firm someday, the way she made me feel like my thoughts and opinions had value. We walked to the parking garage together, our footsteps echoing in the concrete space. Her car was a sensible silver sedan, clean and well-maintained, but not flashy. Mine was a 10-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door and a radio that only worked half the time. "Thank you for letting me use your office," I said as we'd reached her car. "You really saved me tonight." "It was my pleasure," she replied. "I enjoyed the company. It gets lonely working late by yourself." There was something in the way she said it, a wistfulness, that made me want to offer to keep her company every night if that was what she needed. Instead, I said goodnight and watched her drive away. her taillights disappearing into the stream of city traffic. That night marked the beginning of something I did not have words for yet. It was not quite friendship, since we were not equals in the workplace hierarchy. It was definitely not romance, since that would have been completely inappropriate and probably impossible anyway. It was something in between, a connection that felt both natural and dangerous. Over the following weeks, our after-hours conversations became more frequent. Sometimes I would find excuses to work late, hoping to catch her in the break room or the copy center. Sometimes she would stop by my cubicle with questions that could have been handled over email but somehow required in-person discussion. We were careful to maintain professional boundaries during business hours, but after 5 o'clock, when most of the office had emptied out, we allowed ourselves the luxury of genuine conversation. I learned that she had been the first woman promoted to senior management at Peterson and Associates, that she had fought for every advancement in a culture that was not always welcoming to female executives. She had sacrificed personal relationships for professional success, working 60-hour weeks and missing family gatherings to prove her dedication. Her marriage had crumbled under the weight of her ambition and her husband's resentment of her success. She learned that I had grown up in a working-class family, that I was the first person in my family to graduate college, and that I sometimes felt like an imposter in the corporate world. I told her about my father, who had worked construction until a back injury forced him into early retirement, and my mother, who cleaned office buildings at night to help pay for my education. I explained how I had chosen marketing because it seemed like a stable career, even though my real passion was writing. These conversations happened in stolen moments between meetings, in the break room after everyone else had gone home, in the parking garage as we walked to our cars. They were the highlight of my days, something I looked forward to with an intensity that probably should have worried me. The first time I realized my feelings had crossed from admiration into something deeper was on a Friday evening in late April. I was finishing up a project when I heard raised voices from the direction of the executive offices. Curious and slightly concerned, I walked down the hallway and saw Evelyn standing outside her office talking to a man I recognized as her ex-husband. He was everything I was not. Tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit and an expression of barely contained anger. His voice carried down the hallway as he berated her about missed alimony payments and her inability to maintain a proper relationship. "You are 52 years old, Evelyn," he was saying. "You cannot keep pretending that work is enough. You are going to end up alone and bitter, just like your sister." I saw her shoulders tense at the comment, saw the way she wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to hold something together. Every instinct I had told me to intervene, to step between them and tell this man exactly what I thought of his cruelty, but I also knew that would only make things worse for her. Instead, I waited until he stormed off toward the elevators, then approached her office. She was sitting at her desk, staring at her hands, looking smaller and more fragile than I had ever seen her. I knocked gently on the doorframe. "Are you okay?" She looked up, and I could see she had been crying. "Oh, James, I did not realize anyone was still here." "I am sorry," I said. "I did not mean to eavesdrop. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so vulnerable it made my chest ache. "I am fine. Just some unfinished business from my marriage. Nothing I cannot handle." But she did not look fine. She looked hurt and tired and utterly alone. Without thinking, I stepped into her office and closed the door behind me. "You do not have to handle everything by yourself," I said. "And for what it is worth, that man is an idiot." She laughed despite herself, a sound that was half amusement and half sob. "You do not even know what we were arguing about." "I do not need to know the details to know he was wrong," I replied. "Anyone who talks to you like that, who tries to make you feel small or unworthy, is wrong. You are not going to end up alone and bitter. You are going to end up exactly where you choose to be, with people who appreciate how incredible you are." The words came out more passionately than I had intended, and I saw her eyes widen slightly at the intensity in my voice. For a moment, we just looked at each other across her desk, and I felt something shift between us, something that had been building for weeks, finally crystallizing into recognition. "James," she said softly, and there was something in the way she said my name that made my heart race. Before I could respond, before either of us could acknowledge what was happening, her phone rang. The moment broke and she answered with her usual professional composure, but I could see the confusion in her eyes as she looked at me. "I should go," I mouthed, pointing toward the door. She nodded, but as I reached the doorway, she covered the phone with her hand and said, "Thank you for what you said. It helped." I went home that night knowing everything had changed. I was falling for my boss, a woman 23 years older than me, a woman so far out of my league that the very idea was laughable. But as I lay in bed replaying our conversation, remembering the way she had looked at me when I called her incredible, I could not bring myself to care about the impossibility of it all. The next few weeks were torture. I found myself hyper-aware of every interaction, analyzing every smile and casual comment for hidden meaning. During meetings, I would catch myself staring at her hands as she gestured, noticing the elegant way she held her pen or the small scar on her left index finger that she had mentioned getting while gardening. When she spoke, I hung on every word, not just for the content, but for the subtle changes in tone that I was learning to read like a private language. She seemed different too, though I might have been projecting my own feelings onto her behavior. She lingered longer at my cubicle when she had questions. She started bringing me coffee when she made her afternoon trips to the break room, always prepared exactly the way I liked it, even though I had never told her my preferences. She remembered details from our conversations, asking about my father's physical therapy appointments and my mother's night shift schedule. The tension between us was becoming harder to ignore, but neither of us was willing to address it directly. We were walking a tightrope, maintaining the pretense of a professional relationship while both of us knew something deeper was developing. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in early May. I was working late on a presentation for a major client, and Evelyn stopped by my cubicle around 7 o'clock to check on my progress. The presentation was going badly. I had been staring at the same slide for an hour, unable to find the right words to convey the client's vision. "You look frustrated," she observed, leaning against my desk. "This campaign is not coming together," I admitted. "I know what the client wants, but I cannot figure out how to make it compelling. It feels flat and generic." She pulled up a chair next to mine, close enough that I could smell her perfume and feel the warmth of her presence. "Show me what you have so far." For the next hour, we worked together on the presentation, her insights and suggestions transforming my mediocre ideas into something genuinely innovative. She had a way of asking the right questions, of pushing me to think beyond the obvious solutions. By 8:30, we had created something I was actually proud of. "This is brilliant," I said, looking at the final slide. "You saved me again." "We saved it," she corrected. "This was a collaboration. You had all the pieces. You just needed someone to help you see how they fit together." We were sitting very close, our chairs pulled together so we could both see the computer screen. When I turned to thank her, I found her face just inches from mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, could count the faint lines around them that spoke of years of laughter and worry and experience. The air between us felt charged, full of possibility and danger. I wanted to kiss her with an intensity that took my breath away, but I also knew that crossing that line would change everything irrevocably. She must have felt it too, because her eyes dropped to my lips for just a second before she pulled back. "I should let you finish up," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. "It is getting late." She stood quickly, smoothing her skirt and avoiding my eyes. As she gathered her things, I wanted to say something, to acknowledge what had almost happened, but the words would not come. "Good work tonight, James," she said from the doorway, her professional mask firmly back in place. "I will see you tomorrow." I sat alone in my cubicle for another hour, not because I had more work to do, but because I needed time to process what had happened. The almost kiss had confirmed what I had been trying to deny for weeks. This was not just attraction or admiration. I was falling in love with Evelyn Wood, and unless I was completely misreading the situation, she might be falling for me too. The problem was that loving her felt impossible. The age difference alone would raise eyebrows, but add in our professional relationship and the power dynamic between us, and it became a recipe for disaster. If anyone found out, it could ruin her career and mine. She had worked too hard to get where she was to risk it all with a relationship that society would judge harshly. But despite all the logical reasons to keep my distance, I could not stop thinking about the way she had looked at me in that moment before she pulled away. There had been longing there, and vulnerability, and something that looked very much like love. The next day, Friday, Evelyn was different, distant, professional to the point of coldness. She avoided my cubicle, sent emails instead of stopping by to talk, and barely made eye contact during the weekly team meeting. It was as if the previous evening had never happened, as if we had not spent an hour working intimately together, as if there had not been a moment when we both wanted the same impossible thing. I told myself it was for the best. We both needed to step back and remember our respective positions. But it hurt more than I expected, this sudden return to formal boundaries after weeks of growing closeness. The weekend passed slowly. I found myself checking my work email obsessively, hoping for some sign that she was thinking about me too. On Sunday evening, I drafted a dozen different messages to her, ranging from casual work questions to heartfelt confessions, but I deleted them all. Whatever was happening between us, yet it had to be addressed in person. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. I arrived at work to find an email from Human Resources asking me to attend a meeting at 10 o'clock. My stomach dropped as I read the message, wondering if someone had noticed the growing connection between Evelyn and me, if we had been less careful than we thought. The meeting turned out to be about a promotion opportunity. The company was expanding its marketing department and looking for someone to head up a new division focused on digital strategy. It was exactly the kind of role I had been hoping for, a chance to move into management and take on more responsibility. The catch was that the position would report directly to Evelyn. After the HR meeting, I went straight to her office, knocking on the door frame, even though it was open. She looked up from her computer, her expression carefully neutral. "Congratulations on the promotion opportunity," she said. "You are the perfect candidate for the role." "Thank you," I replied, "but we need to talk about what this means for us." She gestured for me to close the door and take a seat. For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of unspoken feelings filling the space between us. "James," she began, her voice carefully controlled, "I think we both know that things have become complicated between us. If you take this promotion, it will be even more important that we maintain appropriate professional boundaries." The words hit me like a physical blow. She was right, of course, but hearing her reduce what we had shared to a complication that needed to be managed felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "Appropriate professional boundaries?" She looked away, staring out the window at the city skyline. "What I want is not relevant. What matters is what is best for both of our careers and for this company." "But what if what is best for us is not what everyone else thinks it should be?" I pressed. "What if what we have is worth more than following arbitrary rules about Asian hierarchy?" She turned back to me then, and I saw the pain in her eyes that she was trying so hard to hide. "You are 29 years old, James. You have your whole life ahead of you. You should not waste it on someone like me." "Someone like you," I repeated. "You mean someone brilliant and kind and beautiful? Someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to be better? Someone I have fallen completely in love with?" The words were out before I could stop them, hanging in the air between us like a confession and a challenge. Her eyes widened, and I saw her carefully maintain composure crack. "You do not know what you are saying," she whispered. "You do not understand what you would be giving up." "I am not giving up anything," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "I am choosing something. I am choosing you, if you will let me." For a long moment, she did not respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "This is impossible, James. The age difference, our positions in the company, what people would say." "I do not care what people say," I replied. "Do you?" She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. Then, so softly I almost missed it, she said, "I care about what it would mean for you. You deserve someone your own age. Someone who can give you children and a normal life." I stood up and walked around her desk, kneeling beside her chair, so we were at eye level. "Evelyn, look at me." She turned reluctantly, and I saw tears threatening to spill over. "I do not want normal," I said. "I want you. I want your intelligence and your strength and your terrible habit of working too late. I want to hear about your day and help you with presentations and bring you coffee when you are stressed. I want to prove to you that age is just a number and that what we have is real." A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. I reached up to brush it away, and she leaned into my touch. "What if this ruins everything?" she asked. "What if we try and it does not work and we lose what we have now?" "Then we will have tried," I said. "Is not that better than spending the rest of our lives wondering what might have been?" She closed her eyes, and I could see her internal struggle playing out across her face. When she opened them again, there was something different there, something that looked like hope. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we have to be careful. We cannot let it affect our work, and we cannot let anyone know until we figure out where this is going." I nodded, understanding the wisdom in her caution, even as my heart soared at the implication that she was willing to treat. "And you have to promise me something," she continued. "If you ever realize you want something different, someone younger, you have to tell me. I could not bear to watch you grow to resent me." "I will never resent you," I said firmly. "But I promise, complete honesty, no matter what." She studied my face for a long moment, as if memorizing it, then nodded slowly. "Okay, we can try, but we take it slow and we see how it goes." I wanted to kiss her then, wanted to seal our agreement with the physical connection I had been craving for weeks. But I could see she was not ready for that yet, was still processing the magnitude of what we were agreeing to attempt. Instead, I stood up and returned to my chair, giving her space to collect herself. "Thank you," I said simply, "for being willing to try on." She smiled then, the first genuine smile I had seen from her all week. "We are probably both crazy," she said. "Probably," I agreed. "But maybe that is not such a bad thing." The rest of that day passed in a blur of normal work activities, but everything felt different now that we had acknowledged our feelings. There was an undercurrent of excitement and nervousness that made it hard to concentrate on anything else. We were careful to maintain our professional demeanor around colleagues, but I caught her looking at me several times, her expression soft and wondering. That evening, as the office emptied out, she stopped by my cubicle. "Would you like to get dinner?" she asked casually, as if she were asking about weekend plans or the weather. "I would love to," I replied, trying to match her casual tone while my heart hammered against my ribs. We went to a small Italian restaurant a few blocks from the office, somewhere quiet where we could talk without worrying about running into colleagues. It felt like a first date and a continuation of months of conversation all at once. We talked about everything and nothing, carefully avoiding the magnitude of what we were beginning, while simultaneously reveling in the freedom to finally be honest about our feelings. Over pasta and wine, she told me about her fears, about the relationship she had sabotaged in the past because she was afraid of being vulnerable. I shared my own insecurities, my worry that I was not sophisticated enough for her, not accomplished enough to be worthy of her attention. "You know what I love about you," she said as we lingered over dessert. "You see me, not the executive, not the woman who has her life together, but me, the person who sometimes eats cereal for dinner and watches terrible reality TV and has no idea how to use half the features on her smartphone." I laughed. "You watch reality TV?" "Religiously," she admitted with a grin. "I have very sophisticated taste in everything except television." We walked back to the parking garage together, the evening air warm and full of possibility. When we reached her car, she turned to face me, and I could see the nervousness in her eyes. "This is new territory for me," she said. "I have not dated anyone in 3 years, and I have definitely never dated someone I work with." "We will figure it out as we go," I assured her. "No pressure, no expectations, just us, seeing where this leads." She nodded, but I could see she was still worried. Impulsively, I reached for her hand, threading our fingers together. She did not pull away. "Thank you," I said, "for giving us a chance." She squeezed my hand gently. "Thank you for seeing something in me worth taking a chance on." We stood there for a moment, holding hands in the dim light of the parking garage, and I felt like we were on the edge of something transformative. When she finally let go and got into her car, I watched her drive away with a sense of anticipation unlike anything I had ever experienced. The next few weeks were a careful dance of professional boundaries and personal connection. During work hours, we maintained our usual dynamic, but after 5 o'clock, when the office emptied out, we allowed ourselves the luxury of being honest about our growing feelings. We started having dinner together regularly, exploring small restaurants where we were unlikely to encounter colleagues. We talked for hours, sharing stories from our pasts, dreams for our futures, and observations about the present that we had never shared with anyone else. I learned that she had wanted to be a teacher before business school redirected her path, that she still volunteered at literacy programs on weekends, and that she had a secret talent for crossword puzzles. She discovered that I wrote poetry in my spare time, that I had once considered joining the Peace Corps, and that I could cook exactly 3 dishes well enough to serve to other people. We found we both loved old movies, terrible puns, and long walks through the city at night when the streets were quiet and full of possibility. The physical aspect of our relationship developed slowly. It started with holding hands during our walks, progressed to brief hugs when we said goodnight, and eventually to soft kisses that left us both breathless and wanting more. She was cautious about intimacy, worried about the implications of crossing that final boundary, but I was content to follow her lead and let things develop naturally. 3 weeks after our first dinner together, she invited me to her house for the first time. It was a modest 2-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, decorated with the kind of understated elegance that spoke of good taste and financial stability. She cooked dinner for us, a simple pasta dish that she claimed was one of only 5 things she could make without consulting a recipe. After dinner, we sat on her back patio, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. She had changed from her work clothes into jeans and a soft sweater, and seeing her in casual clothes, relaxed and at ease in her own space, made my heart ache with tenderness. "I have something to tell you," she said as the last light faded from the sky, "about why I am so careful about relationships, about why this is so scary for me." She told me about her marriage, about how her ex-husband had grown increasingly resentful of her success and had eventually cheated with a woman 15 years younger. She had blamed herself, wondering if she had been too focused on work, too independent, too unwilling to make her husband feel needed and important. "He used to say I was cold," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "that I cared more about my career than about him, that I was not woman enough to make him happy. For a long time, I believed him." I reached for her hand, anger flooding through me at the thought of anyone making her feel inadequate. "He was wrong," I said firmly. "You are not cold. You are careful, and there is a difference. You have been hurt, so you protect yourself. That does not make you less of a woman. It makes you human." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "Because I see you," I replied, "really see you. And what I see is someone incredible who has been made to feel like she is not enough. But you are more than enough, Evelyn. You are everything." That was the night she finally let down the last of her walls. We made love slowly, tenderly, with a reverence that spoke of months of building trust and connection. Afterward, as we lay tangled together in her bed, she whispered that she loved me. And I felt like my heart might burst from the joy of finally hearing those words. The next few months were the happiest of my life. We settled into a routine that felt both exciting and comfortable. I would go to her house after work several nights a week, and she would come to my apartment on weekends. We cooked together, watched movies, talked about our days and our dreams. She helped me with the transition into my new role as head of digital marketing, offering guidance and support without making me feel like she was managing me. At work, we were scrupulously professional, but I caught her smiling at me during meetings, and she would sometimes find excuses to stop by my office just to check in. We were careful, but I could see that some of our colleagues were starting to notice the easy familiarity between us. The first real test came when Paul Mendoza, my best friend since college, came to visit for a long weekend. I had not told him about Evelyn, partly because I was not sure how to explain the relationship, and partly because I was afraid of his reaction. Paul was a good guy, but he had strong opinions about appropriate relationships and workplace dynamics. On Saturday night, I took him to one of the restaurants where Evelyn and I had become regulars. I was not planning to see her, but she was there with her sister, Catherine James, celebrating Catherine's birthday. When she saw me, her face lit up with genuine pleasure, and she came over to our table to say hello. "Paul, this is Evelyn Wood, my boss at Peterson and Associates," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Evelyn, this is my friend Paul Mendoza." They shook hands politely, and Evelyn chatted with us for a few minutes about the restaurant and the city before returning to her table. But I could see Paul studying her, noting the way she looked at me, the familiarity in her voice when she said my name. After she left, Paul was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Please tell me you are not sleeping with your boss." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "It is complicated," I said. "James," he said, leaning forward across the table. "She is beautiful, I will give you that. But she is old enough to be your mother, and she is your boss. This is a disaster waiting to happen." "She is not old enough to be my mother," I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. "She is 52, not 70, and she is brilliant and kind, and makes me happier than I have ever been in my life." Paul shook his head. "You are thinking with your heart instead of your head. What happens when this ends? What happens to your career? What happens when she gets tired of playing cougar and decides she wants someone her own age?" The word cougar hit me like a slap. "That is not what this is," I said angrily. "You do not know her. You do not know what we have together." The argument continued for the rest of the evening, with Paul expressing concerns about power dynamics and age differences, while I defended the authenticity of our connection. By the time we got back to my apartment, we were both frustrated and angry. That night, lying in bed alone while Paul slept on my couch, I found myself questioning everything for the first time in months. Was I naive to think our relationship could work? Was I setting myself up for heartbreak by falling for someone so far outside my usual dating demographic? Was Paul right that Evelyn would eventually tire of me and move on to someone more age-appropriate? The doubts followed me through the weekend and into the following week. I found myself analyzing every interaction with Evelyn, looking for signs that she was having second thoughts or growing tired of our relationship. When she seemed distracted during a meeting, I wondered if she was regretting our involvement. When she declined dinner one evening because she had plans with her sister, I worried that she was pulling away. My insecurity came to a head the following Friday when I saw Evelyn having lunch with a man I did not recognize. He was closer to her age, well-dressed and confident, and they seemed to be having an intense conversation. From my table across the restaurant, I watched them talk and laugh, and jealousy ate away at my stomach like acid. That evening, when Evelyn suggested we go to her house for dinner, I was quiet and withdrawn. She noticed immediately. "What is wrong?" she asked as we sat on her couch after dinner. "You have been distant all evening." "I saw you at lunch today," I said, hating how petty and jealous I sounded. "With that man. You looked very comfortable together." Her expression softened with understanding. "That was Dennis Kim, my divorce attorney. We were discussing some final paperwork for my settlement." "James, are you jealous?" I felt my face burn with embarrassment. "Maybe a little. Paul said some things last weekend that got into my head, about age differences and whether this is really going to work long term." She moved closer to me on the couch, taking my hands in hers. "What exactly did he say?" I repeated Paul's concerns, including his use of the word cougar, which made Evelyn wince. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I understand why your friend is worried," she said finally. "These are legitimate concerns that I have thought about myself. But James, I need you to understand something. I am not with you because you are young. I am with you because you are kind and intelligent and you make me laugh. I am with you because you see me as a whole person, not just a successful executive or a woman of a certain age." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I know there are people who will judge us. I know there are challenges we will have to face because of our age difference and our professional relationship. But I also know that what we have is real and rare and worth fighting for. The question is whether you believe that too." I looked into her eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the fear that I might decide Paul was right and walk away from what we had built together. In that moment, all my doubts evaporated. "I believe it," I said firmly. "I believe in us, and I am sorry for letting someone else's opinions make me question what I know to be true." She smiled then, the tension leaving her shoulders. "Your friend cares about you. I cannot fault him for wanting to protect you. But this is our decision to make, not his." That night, we talked until dawn about our fears and hopes for the future. We acknowledged the challenges we would face, but reaffirmed our commitment to working through them together. By the time the sun rose, I felt more secure in our relationship than ever before. 6 months later, we were standing in that conference room where this story began, the one with the dimmed lights and the view of the city. Evelyn had asked me to stay after the monthly department meeting, and I could see the nervousness in her posture as she closed the door behind us. We need to talk, she said, turning to face me. About us, about where this is going, about what we want our future to look like. Over the past few months, our relationship had deepened and stabilized. We had moved in together, combining her suburban house with my urban apartment into a space that felt like home to both of us. We had weathered the raised eyebrows and whispered comments when our relationship became public knowledge at work. We had dealt with HR protocols and potential conflicts of interest by having me report to a different senior manager while maintaining our collaborative working relationship. But there was still one conversation we had not had, one question that hung between us even as we built a life together. I love you, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You have changed my life in ways I did not think were possible at my age. I love you too, I replied, stepping closer to her, more than I have ever loved anyone. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped as I realized what was happening. I know this is unconventional, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I know I am supposed to wait for you to do this. But I have spent my whole life following other people's rules about what is appropriate and proper, and I am tired of waiting for permission to be happy. She opened the box to reveal a simple gold band, elegant and understated. James Diaz, will you marry me? The question hung in the air between us, and I felt tears prick my eyes as I looked at this incredible woman who had turned my world upside down in the best possible way. Yes, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, and then we were kissing, holding each other tight in that conference room where we had shared so many professional moments, now transformed into the place where we committed to sharing our personal future. That was 8 months ago. Today we are married, living in her house with its back patio where we still watch sunsets together. I have been promoted again, now heading up an entire division while Evelyn has been named Chief Operating Officer. We work together seamlessly, supporting each other's careers while maintaining our personal relationship. The age difference that once seemed so daunting has become irrelevant in the face of our deep compatibility and shared values. She brings wisdom and perspective to my sometimes impulsive nature, while I bring energy and fresh ideas to her methodical approach. We balance each other in ways that have nothing to do with age and everything to do with love. Paul has come around, admitting that he was wrong to judge our relationship based on superficial factors. He was my best man at our small wedding ceremony, and he and Evelyn have developed a friendship based on their shared desire to keep me humble and well-fed. People still comment sometimes, still whisper about the executive who married her younger employee. But their opinions matter less and less as we build a life that feels authentic and joyful. We have talked about children, about adoption or surrogacy, and while we have not made any decisions yet, we know we have time to figure it out together. If you are watching this and wondering whether love really can find you when you least expect it, whether age differences matter when you find the right person, whether it is worth taking risks for authentic connection, I am here to tell you that the answer is yes. Love does not follow timelines or social conventions. It does not care about age gaps or workplace hierarchies or what other people think is appropriate. What matters is finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses to love all of you. What matters is being willing to be vulnerable, to take risks, to believe that you deserve happiness regardless of what form it takes. So whether you are 29 or 52 or any age in between, do not give up on love. Do not let fear or other people's opinions keep you from pursuing genuine connection. And remember that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, like a conference room after hours where someone whispers, "This stays between us," and changes your life forever. Like and subscribe if this story touched your heart, and tell us in the comments about your own unexpected love stories. Because love truly has no expiration date, and everyone deserves their chance at happiness, no matter when or how it finds them.